Welcome to the deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
Today we're diving into a topic that's pretty crucial for any organization out there.
Yeah,
Is using AI or even thinking about using it.
right.
We're going right to the source for this one, looking at the ISO/IEC 38507:2022 standard,
Okay,
which really zeroes in on AI governance.
that's right.
So consider this like a crash course on the essential frameworks. We're not just talking theory here. This is recognized international guidance.
It is. It's a big one.
So what we're trying to do today is pull out those must-know governance considerations
Yeah.
to help everyone listening understand what really matters for using AI the right way
And effective.
and efficiently, but without getting lost in the weeds.
Yeah, the weeds are deep on this one, so we'll try to stay out.
Absolutely. So let's just jump right in. What's the main point of this standard?
Okay.
And who in an organization should be paying attention?
So this standard, this ISO IEC 38507, it's really aimed at guiding, like, the top dogs, the governing body of an organization on how they should be approaching AI.
Right.
And when we say governing body, we're talking about the folks ultimately responsible for, like, where the organization's going and how it's being overseen.
Sure, the ones steering the ship.
Yeah. But it's not just about the boardroom. This standard is relevant for a lot more people than that.
Okay.
It's like this. AI governance isn't just a concern for the higher-ups anymore. It goes through all levels of an organization and even affects those outside of it.
So who else should be keeping this in mind, besides the board, of course?
Well, the standard actually calls out executive managers,
Yeah.
the ones who put AI strategies into action.
Okay.
Then you've got external specialists like your legal eagles, accounting wizards, those who are advising on AI matters. Public authorities and policymakers, they need to be in the loop too, because they're shaping the rules of the game.
Shaping the landscape.
Exactly. And then you have your service providers, both internal and external, who are building and rolling out AI systems. And even the people checking up on everything, your assessors and auditors, they need to understand this standard to judge how well AI governance is working.
So it's a pretty wide net then.
Huge, huge net.
Does this apply to any type of organization?
Oh, absolutely. It doesn't matter how big or small you are or how much you're already using data and IT. This standard applies to everyone.
Okay, so we get that good governance is important, but how does bringing AI into the picture really change things at a basic level?
All right, this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
The standard makes it very clear that the buck stops with the governing body.
Right.
They're accountable for everything the organization does,
Okay.
and that's not something they can just pass off to someone else. But here's the thing. When you introduce AI, you've got to take a hard look at how you're governing. What worked in the past may not cut it anymore.
So the old ways of doing things might not be enough.
Not at all. Deciding to even use AI tools, that needs to be a management decision, of course, but the governing body has to guide that decision.
Right.
They need to set up the overall framework and really grasp how AI changes the game.
Okay, so the governing body needs to be in the know. What are the big things they need to understand when they're thinking about AI?
So there are a few key areas. First, AI can unlock some huge strategic advantages.
Here.
But, and it's a big but, there's some serious potential risks too, including harm to stakeholders. We're talking customers, employees, the public, you name it.
So it's a balancing act, weighing the benefits against the potential risks.
Exactly. The second thing is that using AI can create a whole new set of obligations for the organization.
The obligation?
Legal, ethical, those related to your reputation.
Yeah.
It's like this. You're not just thinking about the good stuff AI can bring, you're consciously accepted the potential downsides too. It's a strategic decision about risk that needs to come from the top.
New tech, new responsibilities. Makes sense. What else is there?
Okay, so the governing body has to seriously assess any plans for using AI against the organization's risk appetite.
Yeah.
Think of it like this. Risk appetite is how much potential negative stuff your organization is willing to stomach to get where it wants to be.
How much they're willing to gamble.
Yeah, and with AI, this means specifically thinking about things like, what if the AI does something unexpected on its own? Or what if the results are messed up because the data was bad?
Right. Garbage in, garbage out, right?
Exactly.
Right.
And maybe most importantly, they need to be ready to switch gears,
Switch gears.
to change or even totally scrap AI projects if the risks are just too big. or if things aren't going as planned.
So it's not just about jumping on the AI bandwagon. It's
Yeah.
about careful consideration and being willing to adapt.
Being flexible for sure.
Okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty. What specific governance challenges does AI bring? I imagine it's more than just your usual software updates.
You're absolutely right. One big challenge is that we're relying more and more on technology and automation for something as basic as gathering data and making sure it's good quality.
Right.
Because if your AI is learning from or working with bad data, the results and decisions it makes will be bad too.
So bad data in equals bad results out. And AI just amplifies that because of how fast and how much it can process.
Exactly. It's like giving bad instructions, but a million times faster.
Okay, got it. What's another challenge?
Transparency and being able to explain what's going on becomes super important, especially when AI systems are making decisions that humans used to make. Think about things like loan approvals. That used to be a person's job. Now AI can do it.
Right.
But we need to understand how those algorithms are working. What are their objectives? What's the logic? What are the rules baked into them?
We need to see inside the black box a bit.
Exactly. And even more importantly, we need ways to review, validate, and update those algorithms.
So explainability is a word we hear a lot with AI. Why is it so important from a governance perspective?
Because if we don't know why an AI made a certain decision, how can we be sure it was fair or unbiased?
Right.
How could we be sure it aligns with our values and doesn't break any laws? And if something goes wrong, how do we even start figuring out what happened so we can fix it?
So the question becomes, if explainability is so crucial, what are the practical hurdles that organizations face in actually achieving it, especially with these AI models getting more and more complex?
Exactly. It's a question a lot of organizations are struggling with.
What other specific challenges does the standard highlight?
Another one is that the directions and controls we have in place right now might not work well or could even be messed up when we start relying on AI to do things instead of humans.
Interesting.
The standard gives a really good example.
Yeah.
If you tell a human employee to hold off on a payment until after the holidays, that's usually clear enough, right?
Right.
But an AI might have trouble with that. What exactly does after the holidays mean? It needs much clearer, more precise instructions to do the job right.
So it's about being much more specific with AI.
Yes, super specific. It needs to know exactly what to do. And that simple example shows how we need to be way more precise and clear when we're giving directions to AI.
That's a really clear illustration. What about external factors, like the pressures from the outside world?
Oh, those definitely play a role.
Yeah.
You've got competition from companies that maybe aren't using AI.
Right.
They might have different costs or ways of doing things. And organizations need to think hard about how their AI strategy affects their position in the market.
So you could be at a disadvantage if you don't adopt AI, but also if you don't do it right.
100%.
Yeah.
But the standard also warns against just rushing into AI without understanding the potential downsides, like unintended consequences, errors, harm. And what happens when you integrate it into complex systems that are already in place? It's not a cure-all.
Right, right. And then there's the speed at which AI learns and changes. That must create some unique governance challenges as well, right?
Oh, absolutely. The fact that AI can learn so fast while we humans are much slower at setting up controls and making sure those controls are followed is a growing problem.
Yeah. How do you keep up with something that's constantly evolving?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right.
How do we make sure these systems stay within the lines, ethically and legally?
Seems like a constant game of catch-up. Now, what about the people? How does AI affect the workforce from a governance perspective?
Oh, it's a big impact, and it has many sides. You have to think about protecting workers' rights, the possibility of jobs being replaced by automation,
Right.
and the need to retrain and upskill the workforce. There's also the risk of losing valuable knowledge if we lean too heavily on AI.
So those are some of the potential downsides. But it's not all bad, right?
Yeah, of course not.
Yeah.
The standard also points out how AI can help people. It can take over the boring, repetitive, or even dangerous tasks, freeing up humans for more creative and strategic work.
And potentially leading to higher quality work as well, right?
Right, because people can focus on what they're good at.
Yeah.
So governance has to consider both sides of the coin.
Definitely. Besides the workforce itself, what other areas of an organization are significantly affected by AI from a governance standpoint?
Good question.
I'm thinking about things like commercial operations, brand reputation. Those have to be pretty high up on the list.
Absolutely. If an AI system isn't governed well or has flaws, it can really damage customer trust and hurt the organization's image.
A PR nightmare.
Definitely. On the flip side, AI can actually reduce some existing risks.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Think about reducing human error in routine tasks or being better at spotting anomalies in security systems. So you absolutely need a comprehensive risk assessment,
Makes sense.
one that looks at both the new risks AI brings in and how it might lower existing risks.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit and talk about accountability. In this age of AI, who's ultimately responsible when things go wrong?
Yeah, that's a big one.
The standard is crystal clear on this. The governing body is responsible for how AI is developed, used, and the results it produces within the organization. The AI itself isn't accountable.
Right.
We can't just blame the algorithm when something goes wrong. We have to remember that AI is a tool.
Exactly. We can't fall into the trap of thinking AI is like a person with its own intentions and
We
responsibilities.
can't anthropomorphize it.
Exactly. And the governing body can be held accountable if the organization messes up with AI.
So what kinds of things can they be held accountable for?
Well, if they don't do their due diligence, if they don't provide clear guidance, if they don't train people properly on how to use AI, if they don't keep a close eye on AI systems, or if they don't enforce the rules, basically if they drop the ball on any of those things, they can be held responsible.
Okay, so it's about setting clear expectations and making sure everyone understands their roles and responsibilities.
It is.
So, what are some concrete steps a governing body can take to make sure their practices are up to par for using AI?
Well, the standard lays out a few key areas. First is direction. They need to review and update all their policies, strategies, ethical guidelines, and value statements to specifically address AI.
So, AI needs to be woven into the fabric of the organization, not just tacked on as an afterthought.
Exactly. It needs to be part of the DNA. Next, you have oversight.
Oversight, right. And what does that involve specifically?
This is all about really evaluating those AI systems they're using, making sure they're worth the risk, making sure they align with the organization's risk appetite, and putting strong mechanisms in place for implementing them, monitoring them, measuring performance, and ensuring that the decisions made by the AI are reliable and can be trusted.
So, it's not just about setting the rules and stepping back, it's about active involvement throughout the entire process.
Exactly. You got to stay engaged. Then, of course, there's evaluation.
Evaluation, right. Making sure everything is working as intended.
Right. The governing body needs to regularly assess both internal and external factors that might be affecting the organization. They have to identify threats and opportunities both now and in the future that come with AI technologies. They need to look at what outcomes have been achieved through using AI, and they need to judge how effective their governance mechanisms actually are.
So it's about constantly checking in, asking the tough questions, and making sure their approach to AI governance is actually working.
Exactly.
And last but not least,
Reporting.
reporting. Transparency is key.
Absolutely. The governing body needs to be able to show everyone who matters that the organization's use of AI is being governed effectively and responsibly. They're the ones accountable, and they need to demonstrate that.
So clear communication and transparency are essential for building and maintaining trust.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Okay, so beyond these core functions, what else does the standard suggest governing bodies do to be ready for the age of AI?
Well, they need to actively build up their own internal capabilities related to AI.
What does that look like in practice?
This means improving the AI skills and knowledge of their members. It means reviewing the organization's use of IT and AI more often. It means updating how they monitor the internal and external environment for big AI developments. It means making sure that employee concerns about AI are heard and addressed. And it might even mean creating or strengthening subcommittees focused on specific AI areas, like strategy, risk management, ethical stuff, or auditing.
So it's an ongoing process of learning and adaptation.
Exactly. AI is not a static thing, so governance can't be either.
Makes sense. And this accountability that we've been talking about, it doesn't just apply at one point in time, right?
Absolutely not.
Huh.
The standard makes it clear that this accountability covers the entire life cycle of AI within the organization, from the initial idea through acquisition, implementation, testing, deployment, all the way to decommissioning. And that includes managing the data and knowledge that's part of the AI system.
So it's a cradle-to-grave responsibility.
Exactly. You're responsible from the moment you start thinking about AI to the moment you switch it off. And strong security controls are essential throughout that whole life cycle.
Okay, so it's a comprehensive approach. Now, the standard also talks about some technology-related traps that organizations should try to avoid. What are some of the big ones?
Right. It highlights a few common mistakes organizations make.
Like,
Not really understanding what AI is and what it can do. making bad governance decisions because they don't know enough, forgetting to include AI in their existing governance frameworks and oversight processes,
Yeah.
using AI tools the wrong way or without understanding the context, not protecting themselves against AI-powered cyber attacks, and overlooking the implications of how humans and AI interact within the organization.
So it's not just about governing the AI systems themselves, it's about managing the entire ecosystem and the complex interactions that AI creates.
Precisely.
Okay, now let's dig a little deeper into the technology itself. What does the standards say about understanding AI and its unique characteristics from a governance point of view?
So the standard stresses that not all AI systems are the same.
Right.
They come in all shapes and sizes with different levels of complexity, and that means they need different kinds of oversight. The governing body needs to understand what using AI actually means in their specific organization.
What does that look like on a day-to-day basis?
Exactly. At what points do they need to be directly involved? When do they need to make sure the right governance mechanisms are in place and working?
And AI doesn't exist in a vacuum, right?
Absolutely not. AI systems are built on and interact with all the IT infrastructure that's already there.
So things like networks, Internet of Things devices, big data platforms, cloud computing.
All of that, it's all connected.
The standard mentions machine learning quite a bit. Why the focus on that particular area?
Well, it's because most of the recent big leaps in AI have been in machine learning. It's a powerful tool that lets computers learn from tons of data without being programmed for every specific situation.
So it's learning by doing, essentially.
In a way, yes. It's about recognizing patterns and making predictions based on those patterns. Data is what makes machine learning work. And that data can be anything: text, numbers, images, you name it. The process involves creating a model from existing data and then using that model to tackle new data.
Okay, so it's all about identifying patterns within data. How does that data-driven nature of machine learning impact governance?
Well, because the data itself, the algorithms used, how the models are trained, and the fact that machine learning AI often gives answers in probabilities, not absolutes, it all creates both new risks and new opportunities.
So more uncertainty, but also more potential.
Exactly. And governance frameworks need to take into account those uncertainties and potential biases that can come from this data-centric approach.
And this is a key point. AI can often make decisions on its own without a human needing to okay every single thing, right?
That's right. That's a big part of what makes AI different. It can analyze data, figure out a likely outcome, and then act on that outcome without needing a human to check every step.
Right, that's the automation aspect.
Exactly. And this automation of decision-making is a big change from traditional IT systems.
Huge implications for how organizations do business.
It can completely reshape products, streamline processes, and change relationships across all kinds of industries.
So this potential for autonomous action is really what makes robust governance so important.
It's essential. The standard really emphasizes that this possibility of AI acting without direct human involvement should be front and center when the governing body is setting policies and figuring out oversight.
So it's a powerful capability, but one that needs to be carefully controlled.
Definitely. You can't just let it run wild.
The standard also points out some key differences between AI and other types of IT. Can you talk about those a bit?
Sure. One of the main differences is decision automation.
Right, we've touched on that. How AI can analyze data and come up with a likely outcome expressed as a probability.
Right. For example, an AI system might say there's a 97% chance that a certain part being made doesn't meet quality standards. That's very different from a traditional system that might just say whether a part passes or fails a test.
Right, a binary yes or no. So it's a more nuanced way of looking at things. What else sets AI apart?
Another big difference is how AI solves problems. It uses data analysis, pattern recognition, and learning to figure things out instead of following a set of rules that a human programmer wrote.
So traditional software is rule-based.
Exactly, if this, then that. But AI, particularly machine learning, it looks for patterns in the data and uses those patterns to make predictions or decisions.
It's more about adaptation and learning from experience.
Exactly. And then there's the ability to adapt to changes in its environment.
So being able to adjust to new situations.
AI can do this in ways that weren't specifically programmed in advance, which means its behavior can be a bit unpredictable. Traditional IT systems are usually much more rigid.
They do what they're told and nothing more.
Right? So this ability of AI to learn, adapt, and make probabilistic decisions, all without being explicitly programmed, creates a whole new set of challenges and opportunities for governance.
Challenges and opportunities, it's a double-edged sword.
It is, and that brings us back to why the governing body needs to be so involved and proactive in setting up the right governance frameworks and oversight.
Right, they need to be on top of this. So, as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the biggest takeaway for our listeners?
The main thing to remember is this. Governing AI isn't just about the tech stuff. It's not just an IT problem. It's about making fundamental changes to how the whole organization is governed from the top down.
Right, it needs to be a holistic approach.
It's about making sure that AI is developed and used in a way that's effective, efficient, responsible, and aligned with the organization's goals and ethics. It's about setting a clear direction, keeping a close eye on things, constantly evaluating, and being transparent and accountable to everyone involved.
So for our listeners who want to stay ahead of the curve, it's not just about understanding the latest AI gadgets.
No.
It's about understanding how their organization, or any organization they're involved with, is handling this rapidly evolving world of AI from a leadership, accountability, and ethical standpoint.
It's about the big picture, not just the technical details.
And on that note, here's a final question for our listeners to ponder. How is your organization, or an organization you know well, dealing with these governance challenges?
It's a good question.
Are the structures, policies, and oversight mechanisms they have in place really ready to handle the complexities and potential impacts of AI?
It's worth thinking about whether those frameworks are robust and flexible enough for this new era of AI-driven everything.
That's a crucial question to consider. This deep dive has given us a good foundation of the key governance considerations.
We've covered a lot.
And as the ISO standard mentions, digging deeper into specific areas like risk management in AI, data governance best practices, and the wider implications of AI would be valuable next steps.
It's an ever-evolving field.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
It's been my pleasure.
We'll see you next time.
See you then.